It is a stunning number. Every single day in this country, 22 veterans commit suicide.
Como investigator Tracy Vetter discovered that despite of an overhaul, the National Veterans Crisis Line is still failing some veterans. Investigator Tracy Vetter is here to tell us what she's uncovered. Tracy?
Well, you know, Eric and Mary, crisis line problems date back nearly 2 years, with issues like suicidal veterans being forwarded to voicemail. In spite of reassurances from the top, we found there are still problems, leaving a local veteran teetering on the brink, literally gun in hand.
There's one of me on perimeter. They shot this guy right afterwards.
Photographs spark Jim Cusimano's memories of his 2 tours in Vietnam.
That's what was left of our trench after a mortar attack.
Memories as sharp as yesterday.
Actually, these 3 girls got killed about 2 weeks after this. I took this photograph. So they just shot them in place in the satches and blew them up.
Vietnam left indelible marks on Jim's soul.
I only have one mode, and it's survive. And unfortunately, it can be scary at times. It will never happen again.
Jim, with his wife Barbara's help, has learned to navigate civilian life, avoiding triggers like busy malls and the smell of beer. But at 69, Jim's health has deteriorated. His PTSD is now exacerbated by the constant pain of a collapsed disc and pinched sciatic nerves in both legs.
I know what he's been going through. So much stress.
I just finally had cracked. After a year of putting up with pain, trying to get this hernia fixed.
That's okay. He describes the pain like a flame held under his hand with no let-up. Then, 2 months ago, Jim was home alone.
I finally got to the point where I just couldn't take any more of the pain. I just wanted to stop it, you know, any way I could.
Jim called friend and fellow vet Lance Axtell.
I was really concerned. I thought that he was, going to cause himself and others harm.
I was loading up a couple clips.
I told him to wait, just stop, relax. I'd be over.
That's when fear morphed into frustration. You see, Axtell called the National Veterans Crisis Line for help.
You have reached the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline.
But when he followed the directions for veterans and pressed 1,
and the phone would go dead.
Axtell says he dialed the number again and again.
You have reached.
And again.
I called him up probably 5 times, and every time that I called him up, they would disconnect.
The Veterans Crisis Line was already under fire following an Inspector General's report that found some crisis callers were put on hold or directed to backup crisis centers and then sent to voicemail.
I am very frustrated that this continues to occur.
Senator Patty Murray has seen the OIG report and says she will go after the VA to get this fixed.
We have to continue to be aggressive. And that's what I'm doing and will continue to do, to make sure that the VA just doesn't tell me something in words but follows it up in actions.
In desperation, Axtell called the regional VA hospital and says he was transferred to a non-attended line that told him to leave a message.
That's unacceptable.
At Puget Sound Veterans Health, doctors David Ruskin and Greg Rieger agree. And they don't know why Axtell didn't get help.
Our process is set up so that every veteran who calls will speak to a qualified responder. The idea that a veteran could call and that not happen is unacceptable.
Rieger says every employee goes through what's called gatekeeper training so that even a clerk or maintenance worker who comes across a suicidal vet in crisis is supposed to stay with them in person or on the phone until a counselor is in touch.
So if there's anything going on in our system that loses veterans, that makes it hard for them, then we're not doing our job. And that means we've got to start doing our job better.
Axtell gave up on the VA and rushed to Jim's house.
He could tell I was in real bad trouble.
Me and his son removed a firearm from him.
Then he picked the gun up, went upstairs and put it somewhere.
The police arrived and took Jim to Evergreen Hospital and contacted Barbara, who'd been out with their daughter.
It was difficult to see my husband being tied down. I mean, they literally had him locked with a key, and he started crying.
Another harsh memory for the Cusamanos.
Oh, I still got goosebumps.
Today, Jim's hernia has been surgically repaired. His outlook on life is much brighter. He has no kind words for the VA, but a message for other vets in crisis.
Stop, think about your family. Hang on, it will go away. It will get a little bit better.
As for the VA, the Puget Sound VA mental health doctors stress that in spite of any problems with the national line or even locally, they still encourage veterans to continue calling if they need help, and they promise to keep working to improve their systems. And of course, we'll be watching.
Two people in your piece used the word unacceptable. That's
Both
what it
sides.
is.
It is unacceptable.
Thanks, Tracy.
Thank you.
A local veteran is wasting away from a disease that will eventually kill him. It's
a condition the Veterans Administration now presumes is connected to his military service. So why is the VA refusing to help him and his family?
Como investigator Tracy Vetter is here with a new case, and it highlights failures by the VA, Tracy.
Well, you know, the most stunning thing about Spike George's case, the VA has already admitted that the drinking water at Marine Base Camp Lejeune, where he served, was contaminated and linked to several diseases. But despite that, the VA has twice denied benefits for George, and now he is running out of time. Walking is a laborious and painstaking exercise for Spike George. Talking, also sometimes difficult. Even breathing can be a struggle. Doctors' reports state George has diffuse systemic scleroderma, which means his immune system attacks his body both inside and out, causing his skin to thicken and tighten, scarring his lungs, keeping his entire GI tract from working correctly.
107.5 was the lowest. Today, weighed in at 109.6.
He's lost so much body fat, his stomach can't process nutrition.
This happened about 2 weeks ago.
What's happening there with your hands?
I can't lift it up like I used to.
George's military records verify he was in the Marine Corps from 1984 to 88, with the vast majority of his enlistment spent living and working at Camp Lejeune. All the red squares on this Toxic Substances Agency map are federal cleanup sites. The blue circles are water wells. Federal reports now confirm that from 1953 to 87, the drinking water at the North Carolina base was contaminated with trichloroethylene, tetrachloroethylene, and other contaminants known to cause cancer and other serious diseases, including scleroderma. George spent the past 20-plus years as a King County corrections officer, wanting to provide for his wife, Faye, and their 7-year-old daughter, Anne Marie. He kept working through the pain and the debility.
I told the weapons instructor, I was like, I can't pull the trigger anymore. It's my disease that's taken over my body.
George also kept losing weight, becoming even weaker, until finally this past January, he was forced to admit he couldn't do the job.
All skin and bone.
Knowing his disease was progressive, George began applying to the VA for disability and health benefits 3 years ago. That was after President Obama signed a new bill in 2012 authorizing health benefits for all veterans who served at Camp Lejeune when the water was contaminated and had one of 15 diseases, including scleroderma. But records show the VA twice denied disability benefits for George, saying there was no evidence it was service-connected.
No one deserves the treatment that he's got.
Chris Brown and other King County colleagues have helped the George family, including filing a second appeal to the VA. The VA also denied George health benefits, saying that since he was working, he made too much money to qualify. By that time, the family had paid thousands out of pocket for numerous surgeries and treatment.
But when it happened, it just totally devastated. I'm like, what am I going to do?
Now George can't work. His county benefits are running out. Faye works 12-plus hours a day to keep her new restaurant and the family afloat. though she'd rather spend the time with her husband.
We don't know how long he's going to live.
The day after our interview, George was back in the hospital, in ICU, and underwent 2 emergency surgeries.
I feel personally they're waiting for him to die and other veterans to die before they step up. You know, it's saving money. That's all it's doing for them.
In December, the Secretary of the VA announced he's changing the regulations so Camp Lejeune vets who get sick will automatically qualify for disability benefits. When we asked the VA specifically about Spike George's case, they said he would likely be covered. But there's a problem. The feds won't pay any disability until it finalizes its own rules.
So any idea when that might happen?
Well, that's the additional bad news about this. The VA says it's likely going to take at least a year for those rules to be finalized. That could well be too late for Spike George.
Gut-wrenching.
Yeah.
And infuriating.
You bet.
Thanks, Tracy.